Afternoon. This session here is going to be called When Errors Happen. Debugging Microsoft Silverlight. I wanted to call it something else, but we had to be politically correct, so we're pretty close there. Sometimes you're developing applications with any technology, you run into problems. And Silverlight, being relatively new in the technology world, there's some issues that have cropped up, and it's really important to be able to know how to deal with those issues when they do appear. And there's lots of tools that you can use. And I do recommend that you use a tool. There's lots of different ones and you've got some choices, but at least use a tool of your choice to help debugging. I've gone through a lot of the pains myself where I didn't realize some of the tools would help me out. And I'll tell you, sometimes these errors happen and you just don't know what to do, and the tools point them out really quickly for you and help you get past them. So in this session, we've got 20 minutes of essential tools that you can work through. I've got a couple demos we'll look at and show you how some of these tools work for the job and how they can help you. Also, some of the tools have some failings in certain areas, so I'll point out what you can do with some of them and what you can't do with some of them. So the tools for the job are real important. We'll talk about which tool is the right job for which situation. We'll talk a little bit about the watchdogs, the HTTP sniffing, HTTP monitoring, and how that can help you out considerably with using Silverlight applications. Debugging script errors. We'll talk about some of the features that you can use in Internet Explorer 8 to do some of that. Cross-domain detection and debugging. I'll talk briefly about what the cross-domain policy files do for you with Silverlight and other RIA applications. And then testing posts and gets and how you can do that with different tools. We'll start out by going through each of these and go through the demos, and I'll try to leave about 5 minutes at the end for some questions. If we overrun by the time a little bit, I'll ask you to come out in the hallway with me, and if they're nice questions, I'll talk to you about them. If they're not, we'll go behind the building. So the most important thing when you're dealing with tools is to use the right tool for the right job. Now, you're not going to use a screwdriver with your nails to do some work. You wouldn't use the wrong tool for the wrong job with technology either. I mean, we've all done it before. You open up the wrong thing to do the wrong operation. It just doesn't work for you. So it's important to get the right tools. So what tools do we have with Silverlight 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever? There's 5 tools I'm going to highlight today, and there's certainly others. The best part about these tools is they're all free. You can use any of these tools through downloads, or some of them might already be installed on your machine. Fiddler 2, or more commonly known as Fiddler. Fiddler is a great HTTP monitoring tool that really does just about everything you could want in a monitoring tool. It'll watch all the activity on your computer if you let it. So it's real important when you use that, because it does so much, to set some filters to monitor it down a little bit. Fiddler can be daunting for some people to set up and configure, because there are some things it does that it kind of hits the gamut of everything. It's almost a shotgun approach. So with Fiddler, you've got to really zone in on what you want it to work on. There's also Silverlight Spy. It's a product developed by a fellow who's here somewhere. I've never met him myself. In the back. And Silverlight Spy is a tool it's a free tool that you can download, and it'll help you debug lots of cool different little Silverlight things. We'll be showing that as well. Then there are specific tools for the different browsers. Internet Explorer has built in Internet Explorer 8 the developer tools, which allows you to do script debugging. If you want to do HTTP monitoring inside of Internet Explorer out of the box, the easiest thing to do is there's a tool developed by a fellow, Nikhil, who I think he named it Web Development Helper. And you can download that for free. It's like a 1.5 meg file. It will monitor HTTP traffic, amongst other things, in your Internet Explorer browser. We'll demo that today as well. And for Firefox users, there's Firebug, which does a lot of things as well as HTTP monitoring. Now, there's a lot of tools, like I said, and I'll explain what each of these does and how they help you and where they don't help you with different things. Well, I said 3 free tools. They're all free, and there's more than 3 of them. Basically, each one of these is important in different ways. Personally, the quickest and easiest thing to do is to use, if you're using Firefox, is to use Firebug, or if you're using Internet Explorer, to use the Web Development Helper, because they're inside your browser. So for quick watching of what's happening with your application and watching the monitors of the HTTP traffic, those 2 tools, you really can't beat Firebug and Web Development Helper. That's really all they do, is the limited stuff that you're going to be looking for, but it's quick and easy. Silverlight Spy and Fiddler do a lot more than those. And if you're doing more advanced debugging, those tools come in handy. So you got the watchdog. These different tools are going to sniff out traffic, and that's the first thing we're going to look at, is how do you sniff out the traffic? What do you do? I was looking for pictures for dogs who are sniffing on the internet, and unfortunately all the pictures I found, they were sniffing something inappropriate. So I chose one of my dog, who was sniffing me that day. So we're going to go into our first demo. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to run a simple application here inside of Silverlight 2. Oh, debugger is already attached. I'm running one already. Yeah. Let's try it again. This is going to run inside of Firefox, and we're going to show the different ways that all the traffic can be monitored through the different sniffing tools. Now, the first one I'm going to be looking at is Firebug, since we're in Firefox. Firebug is a free plugin that you get for the Firefox browser. You can simply click on the button at the bottom of the screen once you install it, and you'll see here the HTTP traffic under the Net tab. To make this work, when your Firebug first pulls up, you need to check a box that says, do you want to watch traffic on the network? If you say yes, you'll see here all the different requests that were made on this page. Now, the first request is to the actual Silverlight page. And at the bottom down here, you'll see the ZAP file for Silverlight. It gives you a lot of key information about what happened here. You'll see the timeline on the right for how long each of the requests took. You'll see the actual URL, which is really important. Notice I'm hitting the Cassini server here with the port number. When you're doing a lot of cross-domain checking, which we'll look at in a few moments, that's really important to know where your calls are coming from. You can also see the total size of all the requests and the total size of the ZAP file. So it's pretty easy to see what's happening and how long it's taking to happen. Now, on this particular application, you can select a chord, and once you select that chord, for C major, the application goes out and gets the MP3 file to play for that from the server. So you can see now I've got this other call that the Firebug was watching. And you make your call, and it plays out the sounds. So you can watch the same thing through Internet Explorer. Pop up the URL. I'll close that. So here's the same application. And if we go into Internet Explorer, in this case, I've installed the Web Development Helper tool, which you can access through View, Explorer bars, then Web Development Helper. You check the box for logging. Let's refresh the page. You see all the same calls. And here's my call down here to my ZAP file, same size, approximately the same time. Let's go ahead and pick a chord. I'll pick a E major. And in this case, we've got the MP3 file showing up down there. So you can see both Firebug and Web Development Helper are really easy to watch your traffic on what's happening, who's making the calls. This is great, too, for when you're loading ZAP files. If you have an application that loads ZAP files on demand, maybe using MVVM or Prism, or just something you've written on your own, it will actually show you all the ZAP files as they load. So you can check to see if you're caching them or not. Any pictures, any other streaming. If you're calling services like from Amazon, it'll check those things for you. And then in Fiddler, this runs actually from the Start menu. And Fiddler has quite a few options. There's a lot going on here. By default, Fiddler will watch everything that happens on your machine. So if I had, the notorious ones are Twitter, or if you've got instant messenger of any type on your machine, you're going to see the traffic that's going on from all those operations inside your left pane. You can filter that down. Since I don't have a lot running right now, you're not going to see much in the left pane. You'll see the status codes. You can turn off monitoring if it gets too crazy by hitting the F12 key. You'll notice in the bottom left, you'll see it says capturing. I'm going to show you the basic stuff that it can do for you. Now, if I run this guitar chord page and I refresh it, and I go over to Fiddler, you're not seeing anything in there particularly. And one of the reasons for this is Fiddler itself will not monitor local host traffic out of the box. There's a couple things you have to do first to make that work. One of the things you have to do is inside of the browser that you're trying to watch traffic for, you have to go to the Internet options. And I always forget exactly which tab it is. Connections, LAN settings, and then make sure you set up a proxy server here for the local host on port 8888. So you have to set up this to basically trap. Fiddler's going to look on that port for localhost now for that particular traffic. The second thing you have to do is inside of Fiddler itself, you have to uncheck one of their options buttons from Tools, Fiddler's Options. You have to uncheck the Enable IPv6 if available. If you do those two things, you will see any traffic going out to your local host from Internet Explorer in that case. The same thing applies to Firefox. Using Firefox, you go in there and you just tell it to route your traffic through the localhost proxy server. And then Fiddler will pick all that up for you. One of the other things you can do with Fiddler, if you're doing any RESTful applications, is on the tabs on the right, there's this awesome feature called the Request Builder. You can make HTTP web requests with gets and posts and other operations right here inside the URL. You type the URL in, you hit execute, and it will show you all the operations and the responses, the headers, all the message bodies, any security protocols, the raw XML that comes back, or JSON. So it really inspects quite a bit for you. And then on the left-hand side, you're going to see all the traffic, the status codes, and all the other information about that request. Okay, so let's look at the last tool that will also do the same thing for you. So you get a good idea of what these four things do. Take my URL, and now I'm opening up the Silverlight Spy tool. Now, this is a beta. In the URL, you type in what page you're going to access. It goes out and finds that page, and you have a working application up here. So I can still do all that. You still see hear the sounds. And why am I not seeing? There's events. I think my bar is too big down there. There we go. You can actually monitor HTTP traffic here as well by hitting the Start Monitoring button. We'll refresh the page up here. Now you see all the traffic once again inside of the Silverlight Spy. And you can also watch performance. You can track monitoring of events as well. So as I'm going in and off buttons, and I click buttons, you'll see different events firing off, and it traps those and monitors them for you. So there's your network performance. So that gives us a quick idea of what each of these products does for us and what we can do in those different areas. Now, there's another tool that's built into IE8. The development tools that are built into the menu of IE8 do quite a few things. A lot of these, now other tools will also do some of these things, but in IE8 you've got a lot of debugging for local scripts. It's really important, especially when you're running JavaScript with your Silverlight application. Common time that I use the IE8 development tools to help myself debug is I'll open it up, which quick access key is F12. I'll open it up whenever I have an exception that's not caught by Silverlight, but it's caught by JavaScript, so I can get into there and I can track what I'm doing and debug that script out. So there's quite a bit that you can do with that particular tool as well. Unfortunately, you can't do HTTP monitoring with that at this time, although I'm holding out hope that'll be there at some point. So one of the biggest issues with developing Silverlight applications is we develop these applications, they talk to other services. Even the guitar application I wrote talks to a service to give it the MP3 files. So when you're talking to other services, you're at the mercy of someone else's web server. You want to go and hit Amazon to do a book search, or Twitter to get their API, or Google, or S3, or any of those services. You've got to talk to their web server. So first of all, it's got to be up and running, obviously, or you have to check for that. And the second thing you have to deal with from Silverlight is it checks for these cross-domain policy files. A Silverlight application, just like Flash applications, when they run and access a service that's on a different web server than that of which the Silverlight application is hosted, it's making a cross-domain call. That cross-domain call has got some implications to it because now you're calling someone else's information. So on that other server, on that remote web server, Silverlight's first going to request to see, hey, do you have a cross-domain policy file? And if you do, is my name in there basically and saying that I can use your service? That's one of the very most common things. People try to access Amazon or Google or any of these services, and they try to get over there, and they get denied because there may not be a cross-domain policy file. Now, Silverlight looks for, first, the Silverlight version of the cross-domain policy file on the server's web root, not in the application root. So if you're building your own Silverlight application, this file has to go in the web's root. This cross-domain policy file is called client access policy.xml. It's pretty easy to set up, and I'll show you an example of that. If it doesn't find the Silverlight version of the file, it looks for the Flash version called crossdomain.xml, which is really important because a lot of these services out there, while Silverlight's still relatively young, Flash has been out for a long time doing this. So if the service doesn't have the Silverlight file, they may have the Flash file there. And they both do the same thing for you. Once it looks in that file, it checks to see if you have permissions to use that file. So we're going to go in and run a demo and show you how that works. Once I can get my computer switched over. Oops. So you got the different ones there for it, and it's really important to know that you don't go into the web root. You have to go into the, sorry, not the app root. You have to put it in the web root itself. Here's a really restrictive policy, friendly to me. Basically, it says inside this policy file, this is a client access policy from Silverlight, you can allow any requests using SOAP from the domain johnpapa.net, and you're allowing it to access any resources within the My Awesome Services folder or underneath there. You can just say in the allow from, don't put anything in there, make the domain a star, an asterisk, and then the resource path, you can say just a slash and allow subpaths. If you do that, you're saying anybody, anywhere can use any service on my machine. So you're opening up your services on your computer to do anything you want. Really important about this, too, is not only does it have to go in the web root, but if you have different domains, each domain needs one of these files. For example, if you go to www.amazon.com, that is a different domain than webservices.amazon.com. So the full domain name requires a different access policy file. And that's a really easy way to segregate your web services. And Amazon does that. So Amazon likes you to talk to their web services so they can make more money. So what they did is they made a separate web service domain so you could go ahead and do that. All right, so let's run the Amazon example. Show you how that works. So here I've got a Silverlight application that searches for books on Amazon. And I got to stop running multiple debuggers. We'll turn off, well, we'll leave that on for a second. We'll do this in Firefox. So here's my Silverlight application, and we'll go to full screen so you can see more. Up top, I'm going to search all the books for Silverlight to data. And here's all the books at Amazon that have that. Now, if I go back to, if I get out of full screen mode, which it's not happy for. Hello. Thank you. Gotta love when your function keys don't work. All right, we'll get out of there for a sec. If we go over to Silverlight Spy, we can see the calls that are made for this. How do you debug a debugging session? That's a simple way. Let's go up here, and we'll take the Amazon service, and we are going to open that up again. And we're going to run that. First we'll watch it in Firebug, and then we'll watch it inside of the Silverlight Spy. So on Firebug, we can see our traffic down at the bottom of the screen. Here's our zap file. Click our search button. And in Silverlight Spy, we come across, there's the application. We can check a Tools Cross-Domain Access Policy Validator. What you do is you type in the URL, you hit validate, it'll tell you whether or not there's a policy file found for my local host in this case, and there is not one found. So each of those, it doesn't work. Now if I go and I type in here, webservices.amazon.com, which is where I'm actually hitting when I make my call to the bookstore, now you're going to see there's no client access policy file found. That is the Silverlight version of the file, but there is a cross-domain policy file, and this is what it looks like. Inside of there is a little bit of XML, and it says, hey, anybody from anywhere can access these services, which automatically says, okay, you can make your call. So if we go back to Firefox, you can see here, it made the call for the search, and you'll see this red one there. That red one says, oops, I couldn't find that file, but then I found it when I looked for the client cross-domain file. Okay. So just wrapping up, we did our cross-domain checks. You want to make sure you use these tools, Fiddler, Silverlight Spy, Web Development Helper. I would definitely tell you to use the ones that are built into the browsers, the easiest to use. Silverlight Spies and Fiddler are much better for doing more advanced debugging. Use the right tool for the right job. You wouldn't put a child inside one of these bags. Don't use the wrong tool to do the wrong thing in Silverlight. And if you want more information on this, you can get my book, which I conveniently happen to have up here. And it's also being sold in the bookstore. If you're interested in talking more about this, we'll have some questions. You just come right up to the microphone. And I would appreciate if you'd all fill out your evaluations as well, before I forget to mention that. They should be on your chairs. If they're not, you can get some from the back. If you have any questions, feel free to step up to the microphone. If not, we can head out into the hallway afterwards. And I'll be doing a book signing at the bookstore at 5:30.